Hello, everyone, and welcome to this BAM and Partner Grant Schemes information session. We're just waiting for a few minutes for everyone to be admitted to this webinar. And just to say, in case you haven't heard the message when you joined, that this webinar is being recorded and that we will make it available on the BAM website for anyone who is interested but couldn't join us today. So I trust that the majority of you have been able to join. So a warm welcome again to everyone to this BAM and Partner Grant Schemes information session, which is being recorded. My name is Stephanie Reisner, and I'm Professor of Work and Organisations Studies at Essex Business School, and I'm here today in my capacity as BAM Research Grants Lead, in which I have strategic oversight over the BAM Research Grants portfolio. And with me co-facilitating today is our wonderful BAM Grants Administrator, Stuart Hull, whose remit is all the operational aspects of the grant scheme from start to finish and beyond. And as you will be able to see on screen, behind the scenes is Eliza Roby, the BAM Events and Network Officer. So from all three of us, another warm welcome. We've got a fairly packed program for today. That's why I started quite early. So we'll have a brief introduction by me, and then I'll hand over to Stuart to introduce the BAM and Partner Grant Schemes that are currently being advertised. Then I'll say a few words about the benefits of applying before handing back over to Stuart to say a few words about the application process. And then we have the important question and answer session at the end, and we're hoping to conclude at 1 o'clock sharp. So that is the program for today. And I'd just like to briefly reiterate the benefits of attending. So the purpose of this session is to give you a better understanding of the difference between the different research grants that are offered by BAM in terms of content, scope, and eligibility. And that will help you to decide A, if a BAM grant is for you, and B, which of the schemes would be the best for you. We would also like you to learn about the benefits of applying and what the different grants have enabled previous grant holders to achieve. Of course, application process and timeline are important aspects, as are common application errors that we hope you're all able to avoid, because we don't want to have to reject any application at the first hurdle. And then, of course, the all-important opportunity for you to ask questions about the grants. So without much further ado, I'm going to hand over to Stuart, who will tell us a bit more about the BAM and Partner Grant Schemes. Over to you, Stuart.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our information session about the BAM and Partner Grant Schemes 2023. What I would like to do is to talk you through the different schemes that we have available in this 2023 funding round. The first scheme is the Transitions 1 grant. You may have heard this title before. This particular scheme is aimed at early career researchers, researchers who are really at the very beginning of their work as an academic researcher. It's not necessarily just for people straight out of their PhD, but possibly also they've been working in practice, but then are moving into academia and beginning as a researcher from from scratch. The PhD should have been awarded within the last 5 years of application. So this is where I was saying that there could be a gap between being awarded the PhD and then actually starting or applying for this Transitions 1 grant. The focus of the grant scheme is to enable empirical research advancing business and management. So what we're looking for here are grants that are going beyond pure literature review, but actually developing a research question or a research problem that has some pertinence now, and looking at ways of responding to that question and to finding answers through various field work and observations arising from the field work. The aim of the grants is to improve the PI's research capacities for further research. We'll hear a bit later from Stephanie about what what the grant schemes enable people to go on to do. What you'll see is that with these very small grants, that actually there can be quite a lot of impact within an individual's academic career. The grants should also be related to any subject area within the Academy's intellectual remit. For this, we have over 20 special interest groups that are hosted by BAM, and essentially we're looking for proposals that fit with those various subject areas. For this, I recommend that you look at the BAM special interest groups pages, which are available on our website. We also have a list in the application form for those. We'll come back to that in a while later.
Great, thank you, Stuart. There have been a couple questions that I think would be useful to be answered now. The first one is, you refer to PhD rather than doctorates. Are these grants only for PhDs or for those doing an EdD or a DProf, a professional doctorate?
I think each of, we refer to PhD, but I believe that EdD and the other qualification that you mentioned are
professional doctorate.
Comparable. Professional doctorate are comparable in academia, so the same eligibility would apply.
Great, thank you. And then there's another one for ECR. I'm a senior lecturer, worked in higher education for years, but only recently doing a doctorate and moving towards research rather than teaching, learning, pedagogy. So am I classed as an ECR?
Eligibility criteria refers to the PhD being awarded less than 5 years before the application deadline. So I think that would be the overriding eligibility criteria. And in the case of the senior lecturer, that they would apply for Transitions 2, but perhaps apply in collaboration with somebody who does have more experience in research, so that there's a principal investigator and co-investigator.
Yeah, so I think the question is, if someone has worked in HR but recently got a PhD, would they then be classed as eligible for Transitions 1? I think is the question.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah.
I think in that case, yes. If the PhD is recent, then yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Stuart. I'll move us on to the next slide.
Beyond Transitions 1, we also have the Transitions 2 grant, which is aimed at more experienced researchers, and researchers in this category may have already been awarded funding for other projects, but they actually want to apply for something that's a new research area that they want to explore. As we have outlined here, the principal investigator must have been awarded their PhD more than 5 years before the application deadline. Application deadline is in March 2023. The focus is again on empirical research, advancing business and management scholarship. What we're looking for here is grants that will have an impact for both the individual themselves and also the wider business and practitioner community. Again, thinking of the research capacity for the principal investigator themselves, and if they're working with any early career researchers, how to build up research capacity from the grants as funded. And again, the same criteria about the meeting the Academy's intellectual remit, thinking back to the special interest groups that we have, that the grant should fit within those areas. And the next grant scheme that we have is the Management Knowledge and Education Grant Scheme. This is aimed at anybody within the membership of BAM. So we accept applications from both early career researchers and also more experienced researchers. And this can be an individual, it can be a collaboration between two investigators, one being more experienced, one being less experienced, or across different institutions as well. The MKE grants are to inform scholarly debate around management, knowledge, and education. With the Transitions 1 and 2 grants I talked about, the grants will have an impact on the wider business community and practitioners. In this particular grant scheme, this is really about how management and business are taught as subjects, and looking at theoretical, methodological, philosophical and practical understanding that informs practice of management educators. This is a phrase that our management knowledge and education group use in terms of defining MKE. Some of the possible themes that can actually be explored within the MKE grants are management, learning and teaching, pedagogy, so thinking of how management and business are taught at a school level, andragogy, thinking of adult learners and how business is taught to older learners. And we also have scope for leadership development, thinking of people that are actually embarking on their careers, and what are the different ways of actually developing those leaders, and thinking of new ways of doing that as well, and general generation of management knowledge across the entire academic community. And I just wanted to highlight here the BAM Knowledge and Learning SIG is one of our 24 SIGs that we have at BAM, and so it's worth looking at some of the work that they do, and also our management knowledge and education provision. Generally, we have pages that have more information about that too. moving on to the project requirements for BAM grants, the expected duration of the grants is between 12 and 18 months. We've been running the grants now for about 10 years, and across the various cohorts, we have found that 12 to 18 months is the ideal amount of time to be able to carry out a meaningful empirical research project, thinking of commitments that academic colleagues have in other areas of their professional life, and thinking of things such as time to carry out field work, time to work with collaborators, time to prepare publications. The funding request maximum for the transitions and MKE projects is £4,000 per project. As I've mentioned previously, co-investigators are possible on these grants, but they're not an absolute requirement. So if you have an idea where you want to work on something alone, then that is possible, but justification would be needed as to how the project would be carried out. The projects should be aligned with BAM's strategic objectives. We have a page which is referenced in the funding documentation that lists these, just to highlight some of the areas that we have. At the moment, equality, diversity, inclusion, and respect is a very key strategic objective for BAM, and also mental health and well-being. So these are some of the key strategic objectives that we have in our strategy at present, and also thinking of delivering research excellence, capacity development of researchers. As I've mentioned before, the project should enable the growth of research capacity for people at all levels of their career, and also policy engagement. So some of our projects in the past have specifically looked at policy, and this is something, again, that is part of BAM's strategic objectives. And another key requirement for BAM grants is that the PIs and co-Is must not be current or incoming members of the BAM Council. That's a key eligibility criteria. And individuals can only be PI or co-I on one application per year, and that's across all 6 grant schemes that we're talking about today. Which leads me on to the BAM and Partner Collaborative Research Awards. We have collaborations with 3 academies. The first is the Australian and New Zealand Academy of Management. This year will be our 3rd round of funding with ANZAM, and we are looking to fund up to a maximum of 1 project, which is funded at £6,000. This is a little bit more than the other grants because of the geographic differences between the UK and Australia and New Zealand. And we also have the Irish Academy of Management, or IAM, which is in its 2nd round of funding. Again, we're looking up to a maximum of 1 project funded up to £4,000. And finally, we are running our 2nd collaborative research awards round with Società Italiana di Management, or SIMA, again, funding up to 1 project, up to £4,000. just to go into a little bit more detail about the Collaborative Research Awards and the scope of these, the key aim is to advance international research collaborations, particularly between the UK and the three regions or countries that I've outlined. So these are collaborative research awards between UK institutions and institutions in Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, or Italy. One of the key things here to note is that the Collaborative Research Awards are to support development of early career researchers as PI. We don't have this as a requirement that an early career researcher is the PI, but priority will be given to applications where this is the case. If there is a more experienced researcher that is named as PI, then there would have to be justification as to that role, and also how they would enable the support of the early career researchers that are involved in the project. Again, as I've mentioned before, these are empirical research projects advancing business and management scholarship, and the same applies in terms of improving research capacities for further research and being related to any subject area within the Academy's intellectual remit. For this, we're referring specifically to the BAM special interest groups again. The application form itself has that, the list, so you'll be able to refer to that there. Again, the projects are between 12 and 18 months. As I've mentioned previously, COIs are required on all grants from respective countries and regions, and we're looking for projects that are cross-national and or have comparative field work. The intention here is to make sure that field work actually takes place in both regions, so both the UK and one of the three regions that I've mentioned. And again, projects should be aligned with BAM strategic objectives and also the relevant partner academies strategic objectives, which you'll be able to find on the relevant website. And as I mentioned before, individuals can only be named on one application across all 6 of the grants that we're talking about today. And that's regardless of being principal investigator or co-investigator. And finally, the BAM, ANZAM, IAM, and CIMA council members are not eligible to apply. So that's for anybody who is newly joining the various councils, or anyone who is currently a member. And some of the requirements of successful grant holders are outlined here. You'll be asked in the application form about obtaining ethics approvals. If the grant is successfully awarded, then the principal investigator is responsible for obtaining the institutional ethics approval. The institution is also responsible for administering grant funds and keeping an eye on the overall budget for the collaborators, if there are any. This relates to all schemes, of course. And there are requirements for interim and final project reporting, and also financial reporting. The interim reports are submitted to me as the BAM Grants Administrator every 6 months, and then there's a final project report together with a financial transactions listing and evidence of spend. The next requirement here, the mandatory presentation of a full paper at BAM conference for the Transitions 1, 2 and MKE grants, or either BAM or ANZAM, IAM or CIMA conference for the Collaborative Research Awards. So for example, a collaboration between BAM and ANZAM institutions would be able to present at either of those conferences. And this is a really important requirement of the grants because of impact and sharing knowledge and learning gained through the grants with the wider academy communities. The final headline requirement is for the successful grant holder to keep BAM up to date on impact beyond the grant duration. So the reporting doesn't end at 2 months after the project end date, but it actually, what we're looking at is tracking impact a number of years beyond the end of the grant date itself.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Stuart. I'm just going to say a few words about the benefits of applying, because certainly my experience and also in conversation with other colleagues, small grants aren't a great priority in many institutions, which is understandable because they make a comparatively small contribution to the key performance indicators against which research performance in universities in the UK tends to be assessed. But Stuart's done an amazing amount of work looking back at the last 10 years of BAM grant funding. And we've looked together at some of the benefits that previous grant holders have gained from what's a fairly modest amount of money through a BAM grant or partner grant. So obviously, we're hoping that future grant holders will reap the same benefits. And there's really three categories here I'd like to share with you. And the first one is about conducting research. Now, research allowances in many institutions nowadays are such that you can go to a conference or two, but then the funds are pretty much run out. So actually being able to have a pot of money for being able to conduct field work, and that's, you know, nothing extravagant, nothing extraordinary. It's all about being able to travel, to have accommodation and subsistence, either if you're working internationally or if you've got to travel to a case organization or to an archive. Similarly, research costs, transcription, data inputting, translation, having a research assistant for a few hours to help out with something, external services, consumables, and whatever other eligible costs there are as per our criteria can really make a difference to research being conducted or not. So I'm very much encouraging you to regard such an award as a supplement to any institutional allowance that you may get anyway. The second type of benefit relates to publication, dissemination and impact. So even though the studies funded to date have been relatively small scale in scope, they have been published in high quality scholarly journals. It's probably the list of journals in our different disciplines that we would all like to publish regularly, but which is very, very hard to achieve. Also, with a BAM grant, you don't just get the money, but you also get access to a community, particularly through the special interest groups. And there are opportunities to have SIG events or maybe even join SIG events and start a conversation and continue a conversation with like-minded scholars. BAM has over recent years built its companions who tend to be professionals or policymakers, and that's an area we want to expand. So if you're particularly looking for developing engagement with research users, I'm sure there are ways that BAM can help you get the connections if they're not already there. And then there's also the BAM Research Grant Repository website, where you can showcase your research and your findings if you're a successful grant holder. And then the third benefit really relates to general career development. In many institutions nowadays, certainly for promotion, one of the essential criteria is a track record of securing external competitive research funding. Now, of course, most of us would want large amounts of funding, but they just don't come necessarily. So applying for a BAM grant, which is competitive, no doubt about that, but still offers better odds than some of the other small grants, can help you to meet that criterion and also start building a track record of funding. So once a funder's trusted you with a relatively small amount and you've delivered, then it's a much stronger case to make to another funder for a bit more money, and thereby building sort of that trajectory of funding. And importantly, also, it can help to lay the foundations for a larger grant application if the work that is done through one of the small grants is conceived of as a pilot project on which future work can build. So even though it's a fairly modest amount of money, and colleagues and your line manager in your institution may go, really, do you really want to spend that amount of time? I very much encourage you to think about it strategically in the long term as a stepping stone towards your career goals. I'm going through these slides quite quickly because I think we're slightly behind time here, but on these slides, I've just listed the titles of the latest round of projects. And what I always find very, very exciting is to see the range of subjects really pertaining to all the different disciplines that are brought together in BAM and the special interest groups, but also the variety that we have from a methodology point of view. So previous slides was about the Transitions 1 grants. Here it's the Transitions 2 grants that were awarded in 2021. So you can see here there is an international element included. There's also quite timely and topical issues around digital technologies, for example. The MKE award, the last MKE award was made in 2019, and here is a list of the 3 projects that were funded then, which again will give you a bit of an idea of the types of work that the Knowledge and Learning SIG is interested in. And again, it's, you can see the diversity of the projects here. And then finally, the 3 collaborative grants that were awarded in 2021. So I know there's a question which we'll come back to. Do you allow international work? Yes, absolutely. We're not operating in a silo, and I think particularly post-Brexit, it's really important for us to collaborate with scholars from around the world and conduct field work elsewhere. Also from equality, diversity, inclusion standpoint, we don't just want research from the global north, we also very much encourage research that is undertaken in the global south. So that's just some examples of funded projects. You can view a complete overview of all the projects BAM has funded over the last 10 years through the BAM Research Grant Repository, and they are organized by scheme. So once you know which scheme is right for you, you can click through and read up on what's already been funded. And we very much encourage you to do that before you put an application in, because it'll just give you that little bit better understanding of what ticks all our boxes, so to speak. Great, so thank you for listening to that part. I'm now handing over to Stuart again, who will tell us a bit more about the application process.
Thanks, Stephanie. what I want to start with here is just highlighting the really important information and tips for making sure that your application meets the eligibility criteria. Firstly, this is a really important one, is to read all of the guidance available. The guidance documents for the schemes is now available on our BAM and Partner Grant Schemes 2023 page. There's a link in the chat which you can follow for that. Another really important thing is that at the point of applying, that BAM or ANZAM or IAM or CIMA membership must be in place. And this is for the BAM transitions 1, 2 and MKE schemes. You have to be a member of BAM. For the collaborative research award schemes, the PI and COIs in the two regions must be members of either BAM or the relevant partner academy. Previously unsuccessful applicants are able to apply, ideally with a new proposal idea that's completely different to what was submitted before. If you are resubmitting a previous application, then it has to be substantially different in terms of scope, methodology, what the research questions are, what the objectives are, rather than just being a copy and paste of previously unsuccessful applications. And similarly for previous grant holders, you must have completed any previously funded project successfully, and to have submitted all reporting requirements for the project, and for those who have been satisfactorily completed. This might be the case where somebody is applying for a Transitions 2 grant after previously having a Transitions 1 grant, or being a COI on a collaborative research award, but being a PI on or a COI on a previous grant. Another thing just really to mention is the submission deadline. Our deadline is the 16th of March 2023, and the time is 4 p.m. UK time. What I would strongly suggest here is that that if you are applying, to register on the BAM application portal well in advance, and also to populate your application form on the portal well in advance of the deadline, just to avoid any last-minute submissions or problems with the technical aspects of that. The applications as received will go through an administrative desk reject process, and this is where applications don't meet the administrative requirements for eligibility, or if there is documentation missing or not completed correctly, then these are reasons for rejecting applications in the first instance. And following that, there will be an academic desk reject process. This is looking at whether applications are sufficiently strong enough to be put forward to peer review. Each application that passes the two desk reject processes will be peer reviewed by two experts from within the subject area identified for the application. And Stephanie previously mentioned some of the financial headings as they relate to to the research itself. I just wanted to quickly go through these again. One of the main financial headings is accommodation, travel, and subsistence. This is generally for carrying out field work on projects. We don't have a stipulation ourselves as to what the limits are. I think there's a question about this in the Q&A. We are guided by what the principal investigator and co-investigators financial policies are around these headings. But of course, we expect value for money being really key here. Not booking first class, for example, unless there are justified reasons that are discussed with your host institution. The next category is external services. Again, this is any services that would be brought in from people outside of the institution, and this would usually be on an hourly or daily rate basis. We don't require a specific quote for these. We did in the past, but we no longer require that. But in the budget justification, there should be a clear calculation as to how the amount has been arrived at. For example, an hourly rate multiplied by a number of hours, or a daily rate multiplied by a number of days, and an indication of the level of the person, for example, with research assistants, whether it's someone that's at quite a junior stage of their research career, or if it's a more senior research assistant. And the final category is consumables and other costs. So anything that that might be required to deliver the research. In the guidance for applicants, there is a list of some examples of consumables and other costs that that you can potentially apply for. As I have here in the slide, PI and co-I salaries and overheads are not eligible for these grant schemes. The application process, I mentioned that applications are submitted through the BAM applications portal. The link is available here. We have given an example of the application form on our website that you can use to have an overview of what the questions are. You can also download that same application form once you start your application in the application portal. There are compulsory questions with word limits. The portal will not let you submit an application if you go over the individual word limits for different answers. The budget itself that I mentioned previously, this is included as part of the application form, so there's no requirement for a separate budget form to be completed. CVs are up to 2 pages per project member, and that's for principal investigators and co-investigators. And there is a requirement for 2 letters of support, one from your head of department or school, and one from your research office. There are some key statements that need to be included in the letters of support. Again, these are outlined in the guidance for applicants. So it's really important to make sure that those statements are included. The application timeline, the the BAM applications portal opened on Monday of this week. As I mentioned, the deadline is Thursday, the 16th of March, 2023 at 4 p.m. UK time. I'm aware that we may have principal investigators in Italy or Australia and New Zealand, or potentially anywhere in the world. Just be mindful of the deadline date and the submission time. And notification of results, we expect to be making announcements by the end of July 2023, with projects, successful projects, having an earliest award start date of the 1st of October 2023.
Great, thank you. Let me just say a few words about the assessment criteria, assuming that you've decided to apply and your application has passed the first 2 hurdles of desk reject. So the reviewers will be given 3 sets of criteria. The first of which is the quality of the project. And all of what you see on this slide is about knowledge of the field, including the literature or literatures that are relevant to the project, quality, originality of the methodology, viability of the project, the potential to contribute to the field, and any ethical applications will be taken into account when assessing your application. And that's really for us as a funder to be sure that the project can be done and it's of quality that will is likely to lead to a good contribution. The second set of criteria relates to engagement with the BAM, and for the Collaborative Research Awards, also the partner academies. So it's about the fit with the grant scheme, the fit with the BAM special interest groups, but also alignment with BAM's mission and strategic objectives. And of course, for the Collaborative Awards, also with a partner, partner communities, mission and strategic objectives. So it's really about, are we the right funder for your project? Will your project help also us as a community to develop further? And then the third set of criteria relates to publication, dissemination, impact and value for money. And again, that's probably fairly standard across grants. So we want to see an ambitious, specific and aligned publication and dissemination plan, impact and engagement plan, and of course, value for money in the sense that the proposed outcomes justify the funding that's being requested. So these are the criteria that the peer reviewers will be used to assess your work. We've also got a couple further events in planning. They will be advertised, I believe, early next week. So please do watch out for them if you're interested. The first one is a more interactive workshop on Monday, December the 12th, which is free for BAM and ANZAM IMCIMA members, and which costs a small charge of £50 for non-members. And in that workshop, we'll be looking at a previously submitted application, and you'll have an opportunity to assess it using the criteria, which we hope will give you a much better feel for how you can ensure in your own application that all the criteria are met to the highest standard. And then specifically for anyone interested in an MKE award, there'll be drop-in sessions planned for January, February with dates to be confirmed. So if you're interested, please have a look at the BAM events page. The events will be advertised there and you can book into them as well through there. But of course, I need to alert you that attending any of these events does not guarantee funding. The BAM grant schemes are competitive as any other external grant schemes, but we would like to think that engaging with what the process entails and what we're looking for in applications just will give you a much better chance of actually being successful. And now, probably slightly behind time, we're coming to the questions and answers. Now, there's a variety of them in the Q&A box. Thank you very much, everyone, for posting those. I think the majority will be for Stuart. If anyone put their question in the chat by mistake, please redirect them to the Q&A box, that we don't lose it in the process. So the first question's about eligibility, and particularly with early career researchers. What about any absence such as maternity leave? Will that be taken into account, Stuart?
The absences such as maternity leave or any extended sick leave, paternity leave, will not count against the 5 years. So, for example, if you've been on maternity leave for a year, then the eligibility would be for 6 years before application deadline. There is a section on the application form, which is a confidential section, which includes additional information where you can just outline that.
Perfect, thank you. Now, the next question is about what geographical areas are favoured. For instance, would applications on an entrepreneurship topic in the African context be suitable?
Stephanie, do you have any?
Well, BAM, even though we've got British in the name, BAM are a global organisation and we have members from all over the world. So for those of you who are new to BAM, even though we've got British in the name and we're based in Britain, doesn't mean we're just interested in research taking place in the UK. So absolutely, we and previous grant holders have undertaken field work elsewhere, so there is no geographical limit to that per se. Of course, it is the overall quality of your application that will be assessed. So I know it's a bit of a difficult issue that sometimes people say, oh, well, I just wasn't funded because my research was in, for example, Africa. That's not the case. So we'll be looking at the overall application using the 3 sets of criteria I've just outlined. So you're absolutely eligible for application and an award if you meet all the other criteria, but your research is planned for another geographic context. Then, oh, hang on, there's another one about eligibility. Are PhD students eligible to apply?
For PhD students, if you are looking to apply, the requirement is that your PhD is awarded at the point of applying. So if you are currently a PhD student and are expecting to be awarded your PhD by the time of applying, then you are welcome to do so. But then at the point of funding, if you are successful, you would be required to provide evidence to confirm that you have actually been awarded your PhD.
Great, thank you, Stuart. There were 3 very similar questions to that effect. So no, as a PhD student, you're not eligible to apply. You will have to wait certainly for the point of application to have completed your PhD. There is another question here about a team of researchers, which is an interesting one. So if we have a team of researchers, one who's an early career scholars, one who is 4 to 5 years post PhD and an experienced researcher with 10 or more years, can the team apply for the transition 1 or 2 grant or both?
I think for this, a key question would be who is going to be the PI on the project. If the more experienced researcher is going to be PI and then certainly that would be transitions 2. For the other members of the team, it would be transitions 1. You wouldn't be able to apply for both with the same set of principal investigators and co-Is. So you would have to decide who is PI and then apply to the relevant scheme, whether it's transitions 1 or transitions 2.
Yeah, and if I may add, always think quite strategically about your team, and really think about who will play which role as part of the research team. So, what does each of the members bring to the application? So that's something that we're looking at as part of the assessment of the work plan. Do you actually have the right team? There's another one on eligibility. I'm a special advisor to BAM Council. Does this disqualify me from applying?
I think the key here is whether you're actually a member of BAM Council or not. I think in this instance, I would recommend sending me an email just to seek clarity outside of the Q&A session today. The eligibility is around being a member of BAM Council. And I think this is something that's slightly outside of that, but still connected.
Great, thank you. If Eliza is here, could you please put Stuart's email address in the chat in case anyone would like to check with Stuart. So do you have to be a BAM member to be eligible? Yes, you have to be a BAM member at the point of application as well as throughout the duration of the grant. If it's a collaborative award, then any member of a team needs to have membership of BAM if it's a BAM only grant, or of BAM or a partner academy, again at point of application and throughout the duration of the grant. That's correct, Stuart, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Perfect. Can we apply for multiple grants per application or only one per year? I think, Stuart, you've already answered that.
Yes, so principal investigators and co-investigators are only eligible to be named as on one application. More than one application can be submitted by an institution, but they can't include the same principal investigators and co-investigators. So it's not possible to submit one application as PI and then simply swap and be named as co-I on another application with the same collaborator, for example. You can only be named on one application.
Great, thank you, Stuart. Then for the BAM ANZAM IMC grant, does the counterpart in Australia, Ireland and Italy also need to be an early career scholar, or can they be an established scholar?
For this, the collaborator doesn't have to be an early career researcher. One of the key things about being a more experienced researcher in the collaborative research awards is to provide justification as to why a more experienced researcher has been selected and what their role will be in mentoring, for example, the early career researcher.
Great, thank you. Can there be international co-authors or collaborators for transitions 1 and transitions 2?
Yes, as Stephanie mentioned previously, the transitions 1 and transitions 2 and MKE grants are open to applications from anybody within the BAM membership, and co-investigators or collaborators can be based outside of the UK, but they would need to have BAM membership as well.
Great, thank you. So there's a question, can the grant be used to extend or support existing running research, for example, funded by a university fund, or does it need to be completely new?
For this, it can be an extension. It can be the next stage of the research. So your internal research fund might have enabled you to scope something out, and BAM as an external funder would then be able to fund the next stage of that research, and then hopefully that would then lead on to opportunities for you to apply for bigger funding in the future.
Are any of the grants aimed more at management marketing research as opposed to scholarship pedagogic research? I'm unsure if some of these are more focused on pedagogic research. I think we've answered that already. So they're all about management research, bar the management knowledge and education, the MKE grant, which is focused on the pedagogic side of things. So I'm hoping that's become clear. So, and management research we regard as sort of the broad umbrella with all the SIGs and interests that BAM and partner academies have. Can we apply for marketing projects that aim to enhance well-being of consumers and give implications to marketers? Stuart.
Yes, I think the key here is to make sure that the project is focusing on empirical research. So I think as long as you frame your project in a way that is looking at a research problem with objectives, and you're going to be carrying out field work and then analyzing that data, then I think that's key. It's to make sure that it's an empirical research project.
Great, thank you, Stuart. Now there's probably one for you because I don't do numbers. Are there any success rates of transitions 1 and 2 from 2015 to 2021? Now, obviously, the number of applications we will be getting in 2023, we don't know, but have we got any sort of past stats that might give applicants an idea?
Yes, I don't have 100% detailed figures, but just off the top of my head, and of course, numbers of applications fluctuate from year to year as well. But I would say that we're looking at probably about 30% success rate. So I think higher than for example, I think some of the research councils, the success rate is really dropping. So it's a competitive scheme. I think that's the most important thing to think. I hope that helps. Just off the top of my head calculation.
Great, thank you. I've just gone through the list and I ticked questions as done where we've already provided the answer to the question, because I'm very aware of time and that we're actually beyond the 1 o'clock. I think it would be useful, though, if we can to go through some of the other questions. So there's a similar one here about the relationship between the application as single author versus multiple authors from different countries in terms of their potential acceptance. Have we got any data on that, Stuart?
We don't have specific data. I guess the thing to think about is that when I'm thinking of the Collaborative Research Awards as opposed to the BAM only uh, projects, is that for the Collaborative Research Awards, we are only funding up to a maximum of one project per scheme. So potentially there could be more competition for being funded as one project on a scheme as opposed to being one of 3 projects on a scheme. But in terms of within the Transitions 1 and Transitions 2 grants, we don't have data to say whether single author or co-author is preferable.
Great, thank you. Now there's another one about eligibility. I'm on a fixed term postdoc contract. Does the grant need to cover the whole period of the postdoc, or can it be transferred to another post that I might get later?
It is possible to be named as principal investigator, and if you're on a fixed term postdoc and are expecting to move to a different institution, then there is scope to move your grant to the next institution. Although I realise at the point of applying that that it's difficult to predict whether you're actually going to be successful in getting a follow-on role at another institution. So I think it's probably something that could be explained more in a letter of support in this instance, and also within your project, maybe thinking of the length of the project and erring on the side of 12 months rather than 18 months for completion.
Right, hang on. Where are we? So we've got questions here. Is there a maximum number of grants under each call, Stuart?
Yes, for Transitions 1, Transitions 2 and MKE, we are funding up to a maximum of 3 projects for each scheme. So that's 9 projects in total. And then for each of the Collaborative Research Awards, we are funding up to 1 project per collaborative scheme. So that's 3 projects.
Great. And a related question, how many applications do you get per strand? I know it varies widely.
Yes, it does vary. When I think across the entire all 6 schemes, in the past we have received anywhere between about 50 to 60 applications up to 90 to 100 applications, and that's for varying numbers of schemes within each of those. More recently, for 2021, we received more Transitions 1 and Transitions 2 applications, but comparably fewer Collaborative Research Award applications. But I think that reflects the number of eventual projects that is funded for each scheme.
Fabulous. Thanks, Stuart. Next question is, can we use the fund to pay survey participants that are recruited on online data collection platforms?
Yes, this is just refer to the financial guidelines. It is listed as one of the suggested items that can be funded under consumables and other costs. I think within this, it's really important to make sure that sufficient justification is included and that the budget isn't simply used completely for participant incentives.
Great. I think the next question I can answer, do reviewers come from the BAM 6 where our applications are submitted to? The reviewers are taken where possible from BAM's peer review college, and we have a wide range of experts there. So you will actually find that members who are active in the SIG actually have applied and become members of the peer review college. But we, whenever we allocate the reviewers, we look both at the topic expertise, but also at the methodological expertise. So the answer to it is yes, with caveat. Then there's a question about collaborative awards and empirical research. BAM is open to any methodology. We are looking for a robust methodology. So qualitative narrative methods are perfectly fine, but equally so are archival methods or survey methods or mixed methods. And if you go through the grants repository, you will actually get a flavor of the variety of methods that have been used. Then another cost one, Stuart, could you, will BAM be covering the cost to attend conferences?
This is one of the key requirements outlined in the head of department letter for support, is that attendance at either BAM or ANZAM, IAM or CIMA conferences is something that can't be included in the budget or funding request. There is potential to request for travel, accommodation and fees to attend other conferences, but again, this must be sufficiently justified as being really necessary for the project, and that funding isn't available internally within your institution. But essentially, costs for attending a BAM conference are not eligible.
Yeah, great, thank you. So here is one. In which part of the application can we explain the role of the COI in the work and the developing skills of the PI, particularly in relation to transitions 1?
I'll just I think there's no specific area. I think it's something that is actually important throughout the entire application. I think here of possibly in the project description, the methodology, the project work plan, dissemination and impact, engagement with BAM and collaborative academies. I think that the role of the more experienced researcher can be brought into any of those rather than being purely for one section.
Great, thank you. So there's a couple questions. Are we only open for applicants from business schools, or can applicants from cognate areas who work in a management area apply? And I believe there's no requirement to be based at a business school. Is that correct, Stuart?
That's correct, yes. So you can be based in not in a business school. The requirement for BAM membership would still stand for this if you're the principal investigator or co-investigator, but it's you would certainly be eligible to apply, but just making sure that you really highlight the fact that you're applying for something that is in the management research remit.
Perfect, thank you. Can you please explain more about the ambitions regarding the publication, dissemination and impact plans? So I've been reviewing grants for a number of years now, and what we are looking for here is going beyond, oh, I'll write a paper, I'll go to a conference and I'll write a paper, but really think about how else can you disseminate your research to academic and non-academic audiences? Are there any events that might help you do that? Could that be any connections with the conversation as a news outlet that translates research for general media purposes? Could it be any connections that your institution has with some kind of group or network that can help you with that? Are there any plans to use social media? So it's really thinking about, how can I go beyond the usual, oh, I'll go to a conference and I'll write a paper kind of thing, and what you can do within the scope of your role and your constraints to make your research more widely available. And then the last two questions, are we sharing slides, Stuart?
Yes, the slides will be available on the BAM and Partner Grants website or web page, and also, as mentioned earlier, a recording of today's webinar will be available in the same place.
So I've just seen a question in the chat. Seems like research using autoethnography would not be accepted. I don't think I said that. All I said is that we are open to any method and methodology, and that for me includes autoethnography. So sorry if that hasn't been clear. There's certainly no restrictions in terms of methods. I hope we've covered everything now. Thank you very much for bearing with us. I think we're about 15 minutes over time, but I hope that's been helpful. Thank you to Stuart, Eliza, and of course, everyone who attended today, and your excellent questions. And I look forward to seeing at least some of you in the next session on December the 12th. Have a good rest of the day.